Good evening. Welcome to... Okay, zombie, go over there. Okay. Welcome to Candlelight Yin, or mostly Candlelight Yin. There's a little bit of other things as well. Lava Light Yin. Fancy. Jiggly Light Yin, whichever version you're up to. Hello, sweet one. Go over this way. Go over that way. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a butterfly pose. And you have an option between the two versions. You can do a seated forward bend. And that might be the better version if your back wants some delicious lengthening. Or you can do the reclining butterfly, which is the one that I'm going to do. So I am going to use some pillows under my feet. And I'm going to put my back on this blanket. Now, I'm doing the blanket tonight because I want it a little softer. And because I can roll it up fairly small. So it's like a pranayama bolster. If you've ever seen those, they're kind of small, long bolsters. A narrow, long bolster. So I'm just rolling my blanket up about into thirds, or about 3 times. And then I'm going to lay that down so it goes down the length of my spine. And generally for me, it's most comfortable for the bottom of the blanket to be about where the bottom of my ribs are. Sometimes it's okay if it goes all the way down to where my sacrum is. You'll have to experiment with your own setup. Okay. So, I am going to lay down on my back. I'm going to figure out where the middle of my spine is in relationship to this blanket. Make sure I'm far enough away from the other furniture and props that I have laid out around me. And you might be able to do, like, I like to take the blanket and kind of make like a little tiny bit of a wrinkle right under my neck. And then I adjust the pillows so that when my knees drop open, it feels like it's just the right amount of support. Okay. So I've got that a little bit high. I'm going to go down just a notch more and adjust. So take your time to adjust the props because we're going to relax into the shape and stay a while. So I try to find kind of the place, like, does it feel better if my arms are in a cactus? Does it feel better if my arms are down low or out to the side? Ooh, the cactus is kind of turning me on tonight, so I'm going to go with that shape. So I'm going to take my arms about, my elbows about shoulder height, just slightly lower than the shoulder, and then the arm, you know, like a swirl. Kind of out at an angle. Not as squared up as a goalpost, but if you want to do goalpost arms, I'm fine with that as well. I got nothing to say about it, yogis. It's happening at your house. I was outside tonight, or this evening anyway, getting some planters all set up so I can try to grow some vegetables in my little front yard this year. It's going to be an experiment. It might turn into an experiment in feeding the neighborhood squirrels, but we'll see. So it feels nice to me because I've been kind of leaning over pots and picking up big bags of dirt and stuff. It feels really nice to me to be laid out over these props. But if for you, you realize, oh, nope, this wasn't the right choice, I want to do a different choice, then just change it up. Because we're going to stay here for about 2 more minutes. yourself take nice deep breaths. Alrighty. So we'll do about 2 more big inhales and exhales. The second exhale is the one we're going to bring the knees together on. Or if you're seated, then roll yourself up with your inhale first. And then exhale and straighten out your legs. Now, if you were seated, you can lean back and kind of windshield wiper the legs or shake the legs out. I'm going to take my legs out all the way straight in a moment. I'm just kind of working my way out that way. Okay, now I'm also going to roll off this blanket and set it to the side for a moment. I will come back to that later. And then my favorite thing, of course, is once I've had something underneath me, there's always a change. And so I like to sort of explore that change, either by kind of rocking back and forth on the upper part of the back, or just windshield wiper in the lower part of the body, like a little, just kind of moves just the back of my pelvis just ever so slightly to windshield wiper the legs. And it feels nice. Now we're going to do a pose called the cat pulls its tail. And this is a variation on a twist. Now, I use a strap for the cat pulls its tail. So I have a strap handy, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to show you 2 possible ways that you can use the strap. So to begin with, it's easiest to start this pose if you lay on your side, and then you're going to take the leg that's on top and just stick that up in front of you for a moment. And then the leg that's on the bottom, you're going to bring that around and grab hold of the foot. So one way to use the strap is to do that part of it with the strap. So that's how I do it. So I wrap the strap around my foot so that when I'm in the pose, get that out of my way. When I'm in the pose, I have the opportunity to do a little bit more angle, a little wider angle at my knee. I don't like my foot really close to my hip. I've got a very sensitive knee when I move it in that direction. So I leave a little more room and just bring the thigh backwards. Okay, now the other way that you could use the strap is you could use it on this other leg. So maybe you hold that foot with this hand and you take this leg out all the way straight like that and hold it with the strap. Okay, now some people can hold this leg with this hand and this leg with this hand and they don't need any straps at all. And so if you're that person, go for it. Enjoy your pose any way you see fit to enjoy your pose. Okay, so I'm setting myself up again, and you can stay laying on your side, or you can add this little bit of a twist to it and bring your shoulders back down to the floor, and that's my preference. Okay, so I am working this thigh backward, and I'm gonna let this leg kind of land out on the floor. I'm gonna put this pillow under there so that I've got a little support. Oh. So this is a little bit of a twist. It can be a little bit of a quadricep stretch for some folks for sure. For me, it's a little bit of a hip flexor, a little bit of quad, depending on how I organize things. It's also a shoulder stretch because I'm kind of reaching down and allowing the weight of my leg to gently traction this arm. And so I like that part of that. And so we're going to stay here for a bit, about 3 minutes. Now, if anything, when you're doing yin, starts to feel numb or tingly, or there's a burning sensation, then you want to be mindful of those kinds of sensations, particularly a burning sensation within the joint itself. Yin is trying to put a little bit of pressure on the joints. It's trying to put some pressure on the connective tissue that holds the muscles and the bones together. So ligaments are what hold bones together, tendons are what hold the muscle to the bone, and then the fascia that lives around and between and over everything. That little bit of pressure, that little bit of sensation is designed to help create a situation where those tissues begin to produce a little more synovial fluid. So it impacts the synovial membrane and encourages the fibroblast cells in there to produce hyaluronic acid, which then hydrates that acid, that tissue. It encourages more synovial fluid production. It encourages some fascia. The fascia has some hyaluronic acid layers between the fascia and the skin, between the fascia and the muscle. It encourages those layers to increase the amount of hyaluronic acid that lives there. So the muscles kind of slip around a little bit easier on top of each other, and it feels a little bit less tense, a little less tight when we move our bodies, right? Our body, almost the way I describe it is like the oil can and the Tin Man in the movie, where he can't move and then they oil his joints and then he's, able to dance and move around really smoothly. So that's how it feels to me when I hold these poses for a while. When I come out of them, I feel like I move a little smoother. Everything kind of slips around a little bit. Okay, so we're going to stay for one more minute here. And as long as I'm not feeling any of those sensations, it can be kind of intense. If I can't breathe, or if I'm creating tension in my body, like my nervous system is trying to protect me, then I want to be careful about those things too. So I want to try to relax into the intensity, breathe deep, feel the different parts of the body, right? And then notice how those places are right now. And then we're going to take a really big breath and we're going to let go of this pose. Now, this is where it gets really interesting to me. So we're going to bring the leg around. I'm going to slip the strap off my foot. And then I'm going to come back onto my back. I also like to do a little bit of movement when I come out of the pose. Really gentle, really slow, nothing too aggressive, but movement. All right, we might even call this pandiculation. And then pause for a second and notice, because when we've done something on one side, we haven't done the other side yet, it gives us an opportunity to become more in tune with, more aware of how sensation moves in the body, right? Does one side of the body feel a little different than the other side of the body? So the leg that I had the traction on the front, this guy, this part of my thigh feels softer, a little lighter, a little longer than the other side. It's quite pleasant. So that indicates to me that this was pretty good medicine, right? When I have a positive outcome, then that feels pretty cool. Now my shoulder is a little bit different story. I still feel quite a lot of intensity, but actually this morning I felt a lot of intensity in the shoulder. And so I think this is, the intensity that I'm feeling is a part of how I slept on my shoulder last night. And so I'm not too worried about that, although I might work with that as I go along tonight to see if I can bring a little bit more fluid movement to that shoulder, a little more of a release to this tenderness that I feel right here on the front of my arm bone. Okay. So we're going to do the other side. So I'm going to go this way, which will look a little weird, but hopefully it'll be okay. Okay. So I'm going to bring that leg across, right? I'm going to kind of rolling onto my side for a moment. I need to get my strap in place actually first. And then I can bring this leg across. And then I'm going to play with the angle, holding onto the strap and deciding if I want to increase the amount of space here. This leg is a little different for me. This hip is a little different. And so I'm going to choose to work with it wherever it is, as opposed to the other side, which was a little more sensitive. So I might pull on the end of my strap and tighten it up a little bit. And so this is the first part. The first part of the pose is get in the shape and then play with the shape and adjust until you feel like you've got it just about right. And then get heavy and let it settle for a moment. And then once you settle in, if you realize, oh, no, I want to adjust this elbow, or I want to put a prop under this knee, or those kinds of things, then add those things in. But give yourself at least 30 seconds to just pause for a moment once you've gotten something going. And then make a really gentle shift, like I think I want to take my knee a little bigger, but my thigh a little further back, right? So I'm just going to make that little gentle shift. And then I'm liking that a little more, so I'm going to get heavy and relax into the shape. And those are kind of the keys to me, which is go really slow, pay attention to the details, and then settle in and pause for a while. Now, in a second, in a few minutes, if this changes for me, I might choose to move again. Sometimes things start out quite intense and then those things soften very quickly. And so I can then go a little bit bigger or add a little bit of a different angle or change the grip I have on my foot or something like that. You can make minor changes along the way. Just be mindful of the fact that we're trying to be stable and steady. And we're trying to pay attention. And we're looking for this kind of just being able to surf the intensity of the pose. Without having to fix it necessarily. But if you have one of those sensations I mentioned earlier, definitely fix it. From time to time, become aware of your breath. And let yourself take like deeper, smoother breaths if they're available. Stay for about another minute here. I'm going to take 2 more big breaths. So with your exhale, you can let go of the foot, and then you can gently straighten that leg. You can bring the other leg back. And nice and easy. Again, we're just going to kind of gently roll away from this shape. Ooh. Move the body gently. Oh. And then pause for a moment and notice where you landed. try to get really kind of curious about, like, what are the most subtle sensations that I notice? Kind of subtle changes. And I'm, interestingly to me, noticing already, like, there's a softening on the shoulder that I was feeling really a lot of intensity in. I'm not really feeling as much intensity. So maybe that little bit of a twist helped to kind of rinse that spot out for me a little bit. And I wasn't trying to do that. It's just kind of cool that it happened. So we're going to give ourselves a little back massage. And then we're going to come up for a seated position. So you can take all the time you like, and if you care to, you can do some little cat-cow shapes in between. Oh. You want to get a drink of water or something like that? Do that. So once you have come around to this point where you're sitting on your mat, we're going to start with a square or a shoelace or some equivalent. Now, that being said, if you could always go back onto your back and do this pose that way. You could lay on your back, put one leg on top of the other, hold onto your legs, okay? So I have a blanket handy just in case. Got a couple throw pillows, and I like to have a block. So everything else I can pretty much set off to the side. So for me, it's best to do the square. And the square means that I take one shin and put it on top of the other shin. Generally, that's the square so that the legs make a square when you look down at them. The shoelace is like the cow face pose, just a different name. So the knees stack more on top of each other. It makes a triangle when you look down at your legs. So either of those will do. For some people, both are the same accessibility. Like you have the same amount of... they're both great poses, right? You can do either one. For me, I can do either one if I elevate my hips for the shoelace, because I need a little higher hip. This one I like better, and I like to modify it by putting a block in front and letting my shin rest on the block instead of on my thigh, so that the bony part of my ankle isn't pressing into this really tender attachment area where my inner thigh connects to my knee. So that's my preference. You can also do this with the legs just kind of sitting cross-legged and just bring them in more into a square, or you can have a straight leg with one leg bent on top. So all of those are options. Just choose the one that's right for you. And this is where I kind of test out my world, right? So I'm going to lean forward. I'm going to rock my sit bones out. I'm going to see if there's any tenderness around my knees, because maybe this knee would like a little support with the blanket. Some people can fold so far forward that their elbows reach the floor. I cannot. As far as I'm going. Now I like to give my feet, especially at the end of a day, I love to give my feet this little stretch where I stick a finger in between each of my toes. So I just do the top foot, and then I'll do the top foot on the other side. And then once I've got my fingers in there, then my toes kind of get a gentle traction. And it releases a little tension from my metatarsals too. You can rinse out tension from your neck. If you want to, you could wrap your arms behind your back and do a reverse prayer or something along that line. I'm going to stay with this for the first couple minutes, and then I'm going to change things up just a little bit for the second 2 minutes. So we're staying with this pose for a bit longer. So we are at the 2-minute mark. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add a little change to this. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to side bend. So I'm going to let go of my foot, and the side that's on the bottom is the side I'm going to stretch, right? So I'm going towards this leg that's on top. Now you can put your arm over your head if you like. But I am just going to stay with the bend just because I'm interested in my spine and in this side of my hip right here, getting the little extra bit of length, which is why I'm doing the bottom leg, because I've got this kind of situation so that that's sort of staying down a little bit just by gravity holding it and my legs holding it in place. And I'm getting a little bit more of a stretch on this side of my hip. Thanks for hanging with me through that, Zoomies. I'm letting my head kind of hang to the side. I've got my shoulder here. If my head gets far enough over, it might actually make contact. But it's not making contact right now, but I am kind of just letting it hang to the side. We're going to stay for 1 more minute. If this gets a little tedious on my neck, then I might come back up. Right now it's feeling kind of good. Now some people, again, might be able to put their elbow on the floor over here, or even put a block underneath the elbow and rest on the block. I'm fine with just sort of, right now, I'm kind of okay with just letting myself lean this way. But I have definitely made that choice before, to have the elbow supported. Okay, so we're going to take one more big breath here. You're going to exhale out it. Now draw your navel in just a little bit and come all the way up. I'm going to hold my head for a moment because I was really letting my neck traction out, so that helps me. Then I'm going to lean back and unpretzel the legs. And I like to do a little bit of movement. Just legs, a little bit of spine, just kind of rinse everything out before we go on to the next pose. Alright, so the next pose is called a half saddle. And if you're not familiar with the half saddle, you might be more familiar with the pose called hero pose, which is where you kneel on the floor and then you sit down between your feet so that the tops of your shins and the tops of your feet are on the ground and you're sitting between your heels. So we're going to do that, but only one leg at a time. So it's a half saddle pose, or half hero pose. In the yin world, things have been changed. The names have been changed to protect the poor innocent poses from your preconceived notions about what they might be like. Okay, so I have put a blanket down because I like a blanket under the top of my shin so that the top of my ankle has a little bit of extra support, and there's a little bit of extra support for my knee. I also like to have quite a bit of support under my back. So you can use some throw pillows in a stack. You can use a bolster, which is what I'm going to do. And then I am going to kind of recline back onto this guy. Okay, so I'm going to do my right leg first, which is the leg that's closer to you guys. And to do that, I'm going to bring the foot around behind me like that, okay? And I cannot get my foot all the way up to my heel. Again, same issues that I had with the cat pulls its tail, I also have with this pose. And the cat pulls its tail is an alternative to this if you want to do that one again. I used it tonight more like a prep pose for this pose. But you can certainly go back to that notion, or you can sit up like this, so you're not laying all the way back. So you have like this sensation across the front of the thigh. It's going to wrap around the knee joint. Just be very mindful. If you're like me and your foot doesn't come up against your hip really tight, you're going to need to turn your hip to maintain the relationship between the hip and the knee. So that's what I am going to do. I'm going to use my bolster, and I'm going to kind of lean a little bit on the diagonal so that I line my hip up better with my knee. And then we're going to stay for about the same amount of time we held that last pose, about 4 minutes. And once we've settled in, and again, you can, like, let's say you're noticing, I think I need a little more knee support. Throw a little more knee support in there. Right? Bend your blanket or throw in another blanket. You can, fold it up. It's a little softer for me on my carpeted surface for the top of my foot, so I don't need that as much, but I might need more knee support on this particular kind of a surface. A harder surface floor has different parameters. So I'm going to go down a little bit lower. I'm still turning my hip more on the diagonal to kind of line myself up with my knee. I'm definitely feeling the tension from my quadriceps. Oh, it's feeling pretty good, yogis. Intense, but not so intense that my jaw's tightening up or my eyebrows are starting to knit together. My shoulders are getting a little hunchy up by my ears, so it's feeling like it's appropriate to me. When I feel my body start to tense up, almost like I'm on a bed of nails and my nervous system is trying to get me off the bed of nails, that usually tells me I'm going too far. But if I can sort of relax and get a little heavy, then it's not so bad. Relax through your mouth. Now I like to do the cat pulls its tail and then this pose, so I kind of come back into the same territory. On the front of the thigh lie the acupuncture meridians for the stomach and the spleen. As we wrap around towards the inner thigh, we hit the kidneys and then the liver. And then the back of the thigh, around the outside edge of the thigh, you get the gallbladder, and around the back of the thigh, the regular bladder, the urinary bladder. So when we work with the legs, we work with the acupuncture meridians that are responsible for a large part of our kind of digestive, eliminative function. Which is also subject to some, stress changes. Like often the digestion gets a little thrown off by stress. We might not be eating the same foods, or we might be having to, we might be snacking a little bit more than normal because we're in our houses and there are snacks. It's hard to know. I'm trying to keep myself from stress eating, but it's not always easy. So we're a little bit over the halfway mark here, yogis. So I don't know if our practice necessarily is going to change our relationship to our digestive system, but if it gives it any bit of a boost, then it would be worth it. So with this last minute here, I'm going to let myself get a little bit, I think I've put this pillow under my head so I can really let my head fall back. There's a little bit of that acupuncture meridian also kind of falls in the front of the belly, so I'm just letting that area open up. And the stomach also goes all the way around the mouth, so maintaining that really soft, fluffy, kind of soft relationship with the mouth and the jaw. Take 2 more big breaths. And then we're going to gently, now the way that I come out of this is I bring my long leg thigh right up against my knee, and then I roll onto that leg so that I have structure for my knee, and then I straighten it out. Oh. And then you can bring yourself to a seated position, or you can lie down and kind of give yourself a little bit of movement. And then you want to just kind of feel and notice, like if there's places that feel tender, especially the knee is a tricky joint because it's mostly meant to be a hinge. And when we start to do things that kind of ask the knee to do these twisty motions, even though the knee has the ligaments inside to make that possible, it can be a little bit tricky when we hold that shape for a while. So notice the sensations like on the outer and inner edge of your knee. And if there's anything that feels like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, then learn from those things, right? So those are places that are a little bit more tricky. If the knee itself feels pretty good, like my knee feels pretty light, everything feels pretty great. I don't feel anything in particular that feels tricky, but I was really careful along the way to kind of make sure I had enough support. So as you go along the way, you'll want to make sure you do the same amount, same thing. Okay, but before we do worry about the other side, we're going to do one more pose on this side, which is the swan. So that leg that I had straight out in front of me is going to become my bent leg. I am going to use a pillow underneath my hip, and then I'm going to extend the leg that was bent all the way back. Okay. So, again, you could do the swan on your back. Just throw one leg up on top of the other. All these poses kind of hit similar areas in the hip, and so you can modify them to make them yours. You can also bend this knee and rest the foot up on a pillow or blanket, or hold onto it with your hand if you care to. And again, we're going to stay with this pose for about the same amount of time, about 4 minutes. Hanging out, might be a little more, a little less. Now it's okay to take this back leg and kind of bend it out to the side a little bit. It's okay to lean a little bit differently. So you just want to set yourself up so that you feel like you can stay stable. And again, there's the right amount of pressure on the tissue and nothing that feels dangerous to you. I would trust your own instincts on things more than you trust necessarily someone else's opinions. Yin takes a while to get used to, and especially if you're relatively new to yin, give yourself permission to come out of the poses a little early, or do a little bit of movement, or add more support to the pose, so that you have kind of the right amount of comfort as you are exploring these kinds of deeper shapes or longer held shapes. And don't forget to keep coming back to that deep, rhythmic, smooth breath. stay for about another minute. I'm just going to prop myself up a little higher, especially if you get any numbness in your or tingling in your toes. Prop up a little bit higher. You might use pillows to do it, or you can sort of prop up on your hands, and that will help with that. Sometimes for me it's fun to prop up on the hands just so there's a little more of a back bend here. And you just kind of make sure that your relationship with your sacrum is one that is good and balanced. Take a nice big breath. You're going to exhale. Kind of lean into your bent leg hip. Bring your back leg around. We're going to take a few moments just to rinse everything out before we do this whole thing again on the other side. I especially like to take a few moments and just really feel the differences between the two legs, between my shoulders, between the lower body and the upper body, if there are any. You might even stretch out on your back and do that as well. So I'm interested in, I'm curious about sometimes the different impacts that the poses have and the different ways the poses kind of have of working with my body. So just kind of make a little map, you know, how did that feel? We get to the other side, we'll check in again. So we're going to start with the other leg in the shoelace or the shoelace equivalent or the square pose, you know, whichever version you're up to. And maybe you're going to do this little foot thing with me. Get your fingers in between your toes for the first couple of minutes. We'll just settle in, let ourselves kind of lean forward into it, or sit more upright. You don't have to lean forward. That may not be right for you. Just come back every now and then to your mouth and around your eyes, relaxing through the mouth, relaxing around the temples. So this pose is one of the poses that kind of works this outer hip, which is where the gallbladder lives. And the gallbladder meridian runs around the side of the head, in addition to like all the way down the body. So tension in the temples, or you know, that kind of pressure on the side of the head that sometimes I get when I'm like really grouchy about something. There might be tension in the jaw. So trying to relax all of that area in addition to kind of relaxing your body. We're halfway through here, a little over. So I'm gonna let go of my foot and I'm gonna take myself into that little side bend going out this way. Oh. And again, you could take the arm over your head for part of it or all of it. It felt kind of nice for me to stretch that out to begin with, and then it's also feeling kind of nice just to let it stay so that more of the focus is on this kind of part of my neck. Oh, it's nice to let go of some tension along the side of my neck. Taking some deep breaths. inside that last minute now, you guys. I've got a couple more breaths here. Okay, so I'm going to give my head a little support. I'm going to inhale my way up. And then I'm going to lean back and undo this pose. Oh, give everything a little bit of a rinse. Oh. Ooh, that was good. Okay, so I'm going to do the other side of my half saddle. Give myself a little blanket and a bolster and a pillow. Okay, so I'm going to take this guy up here. I'm going to get closer to it. I'm going to lean back and I'm going to, again, kind of turn myself on the diagonal, right? So feeling out the sensation in the top of the thigh, trying to match my hip to my knee. And it feels pretty good, usually for me, to lie down, kind of on the elbow and hang out. Eventually it might be nice to come all the way back. It's actually feeling better, easier on this side than it did on the other side. Oops, sorry about that, buddy. Do you guys call your plants buddy? That's my pet name for all my plants. Hey, buddy. I've had other names for them, but I don't give them individual names. For I would like to. I like the idea of that. It just doesn't come naturally to me. But I do call them buddy or pal all the time. And these guys, I've been watching their leaves move with my breath, and that's been kind of fun too tonight. Let's see how far my breath reaches the leaves. So you're feeling like, oh, like is this tissue starting to surrender? Because we've been here a minute now, so it's a good kind of starting point to see, like, if I'm feeling a lot of pressure, I might even kind of lean a little more or add a little bit more support. If things are kind of like, yeah, things are sinking in, it's starting to feel good, it's getting a little softer, like, if it feels more inviting, go with those sensations as well. And take a nice deep breaths. Sometimes it feels really good to put your arm over your face. Or somewhere else for that matter. So, playing around here. We got about a minute and a half or so. about 45 seconds. It's about five or so deep breaths. So we take one more big inhale. And again, with your exhale, you can come out whichever way works best for you. But if this way works, then kind of hug those thighs together so your knee has that little bit of support as you straighten it out. And then come on back and give yourself a little rinse. Oh, some ankle circles always feel nice to me. And then pause for a second. You just get really soft and feel how things are. And then we're going to go into the swan on this other side. Okay. So the leg that was out straight is going to become my bent leg. And again, I'm going to put a cushion underneath there. Let's see how straight I can make that back leg within reason. And then I like to have the bolster. Or you can use couch cushions, like whatever you got at home, man. If you don't got no fancy yoga bolsters, you don't need them. Grab some cushions off your couch. If you've got antique sofas that don't have cushions you can take off, then that might be a problem. Get a handful of pillows, y'all. do whatever you need to do. And then you kind of feel yourself out here. Does it feel better to have like a little more of a bend in that back leg? Does it feel better to have that leg straighter? Should you organize the front foot a little closer in or a little farther out? So kind of within this first minute is that time to sort of find the exact right spot. And then as we come into the second minute, we're just relaxing into it. Trying to unwind any tension that we might carry around habitually. We're back in that gallbladder territory. Sometimes if I hold this pose long enough, my mind will start to think of little things that make me irritated, which I find fascinating. I once spent 6 minutes in a pigeon pose thinking about how people don't know how to alternate merge on the road. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. But and then I realized, oh yeah, I was a little in my gallbladder there. Gallbladder is the organ in Chinese medicine. Every organ has kind of an emotion that corresponds to it, and the gallbladder is kind of the corresponding emotion to like grouchiness or irritation. It's not straight up anger, but it's not far off of it. If you and your family are starting to get a little bit tired of one another, you might be experiencing some gallbladder discomfort. Just letting yourself relax here as we go into our last minute of this pose. right, yogis, we have about 30 seconds here. So just kind of noticing your last few breaths. Take a nice big inhale. You're going to let yourself lean into that bent leg hip, bring your back leg around, or if you did a different version, you just unwind what you did. Whatever your version is. Oh, goodness gracious, y'all. Okay. So, giving yourself that little bit of time to check in and see how things are moving along. So we're going to choose a forward bending shape that seems right for you. So it might be that the better option will be to have your legs quite close together and to fold over them. And then the other option would be to have the legs quite wide apart and fold over them. So that is between you and you. I am going to go for the wider legs today. And one of the props that I like to use for that is I like to take a blanket and roll it up so that I have a little bit of support underneath my knees. Now, for me, it's because I hyperextend my knees quite easily. My quadriceps are tighter than my hamstrings, and that creates a little bit of an imbalance. And as such, my joints over time have become a little bit vulnerable to hyperextension at my knee, okay? So for me, that's a little better to have a bent knee. Now for you, it might be better to have a bent knee because you got tight hamstrings. You can also sit up on the edge of a blanket. And so the legs can be like in between. Maybe they're wide, but not as wide apart as you normally would go, right? Or they're close, really close together. Now in any case, what we're gonna try to do is allow the legs to relax. So if your legs naturally kind of fall open, so the toes fall out, let them do that. If your legs naturally fall inward, which is rare, but might happen because maybe that's you, you can let them fall in. So if they happen to balance themselves and naturally stay pointing straight up, that's also fine. Everybody's joints are shaped a little differently, and so you're just gonna, whatever happens is fine. But just let them do their natural thing is basically what I'm trying to say in way too many words. Okay, so then let yourself fold forward. So you could build up a little pillow stack here. You can lay onto the pillow stack if it's, you know, far enough that you can lay onto it. Do that. And we're going to stay here a while, about 5 minutes. So along the way, if you feel like you need to change something, you can change it. But do try to find a place where you can get mostly stable for a while. For me, the first minute or so, I like to kind of check in with the places that feel tight. Feeling a little bit of tightness around my low back, likely from carrying really large bags of soil from one end of my front yard to the other. And so it feels kind of nice right now to just breathe into those places and give them a little gentle movement. So don't forget that deep rhythmic breath. through here. A little tiny bit over that. So we're going to take one more minute with this shape. Okay, so you're going to take a really big breath. Holding that breath in, come all the way up. And then let it go. And lean back and bend your knees. And then you can move your legs around a little bit. Like that. Now, the second hand on my clock has been moving around, but the minute hands have not moved in some time. So I'm going to come over here and double check what time it is so that I can keep track of what we're up to. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm not sure what has happened to my clock here, but it is a little different than I suspected. Anyway, okay, so we are now going to do an inversion. So inversion means you're going to put your legs up higher than your head, or your hips higher than your head. You could do a supported bridge pose. So you can do the supported bridge pose with a pillow, or you could do the supported bridge pose with a block. And essentially what you do is you put the object underneath your pelvis so that your pelvis is supported, your shoulders rest on the floor, and your neck is comfortably resting. And then you can stretch your legs out if you want to do the bridge, and just so your feet rest on the floor, you kind of come up and over the bolster and back down. So you sort of resemble a bridge from the side. You can do a supported shoulder stand where you do the same setup, but then you take your legs up, so kind of balance them over the object. You can do a snail pose. This is a little bit like the plow, except you bring the knees in as close to the ears as possible, and the pose is called Karna Pindasana, or ear pinning pose in Sanskrit. So that's another option. Now what I'm going to do is my favorite version of legs up the wall in a space like what I've got going on here, which I don't really have any empty wall space, but I do have some furniture. And so I'm going to do legs over the furniture. So if you have a chair, or you have a couch, or you have something where you can put your legs up on it, that's what we're up to. So I'm going to take these little pillows. I might need only one of them, but I'm going to try. Oh yeah, one's going to be enough. So I'm going to put a pillow in the base of this chair, because my thigh bone is taller than the base of this. So I need just a little bit more height. And then I'm also going to take a blanket for my head. So I'm going to put that up top. And I'm going to bring my hips right up against the edge of the chair here. And so to do that, it helps to lay on your side and then kind of caterpillar your way over until you feel your hips touch the edge of the chair, or you can kind of feel the spacing, the edge of the couch, whatever you're up to. Oop, I gotta work around these little lights. Oh. And then once I'm in here, I just let my legs rest. And then I take the blanket under my head. Now if you want more of a lift, You can put a pillow or a blanket underneath your hips so that your hips are a little more elevated. For me, quite often just having the legs elevated is enough. And then we're going to hang out with this inversion for a little bit. Oh. Now, what I like about inverted postures is that it helps, like the blood flow in the legs is a little bit easier on the return to the heart. So there's a little bit of a lowering of the blood pressure, because that's a lot of territory, you guys. Like, all that blood's got to pull myself all the way back up here. And so when we lay down or we get upside down, like that blood flow is a little bit easier on the way up, back up. You know, I mean, our hearts are strong and, you know, feisty, and they'll pump that blood around, but it's nice. It just gives the blood pressure a little bit of a chance to lower down. Now, if you take a blood pressure medication, or if you are really athletic and you naturally have a low blood pressure anyway, you know, for whatever reason you have a low blood pressure, if you feel dizzy in this pose, elevate your head a little bit, okay, because that will help. And then when you come out really, really slow. You'll lay on your side for quite some time. Okay. So, otherwise, you're just going to relax and see how things go. Mostly, what's cool with one of the things that I think is really interesting about this shape is that there are some studies done in India indicated that it lowers the amount of stress hormones in the bloodstream. So I think it's interesting to, like, having that little tidbit of knowledge is to see, does it really work that way for me? Does it make me feel like, you know, because I've grown accustomed to this kind of sense of low-grade panic. Over the course of my lifetime, I've been more prone to anxiety and panic attacks. And so when I regularly practice poses just regular yoga practice in general, but also when I do poses like this, do I sleep a little better? Do I have a little bit less of the sort of anxiety symptoms that I might experience? Whatever those might be for you. And one of the things about yoga that's really important to remember is that it is an experiential science or an experiential learning. We can't rely on everything that someone else teaches us. Those are good signposts, but we still have to go in there and do it ourselves and see for ourselves if the things that we've been told are true. Coco, be careful up there. So we'll stay for about one more minute here. Hi, sweetie. Now here's the thing, yogis. It's possible that you set yourself up with this and you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to leave this pose. Well, friends, you don't have to. You could stay just like this if you want to. This is a really comfortable way to do Shavasana for me. Because all the pressure's off my hip flexors, and my back feels really lovely and stretched out on the floor and spread out. And my arms feel really nice, so I could stay right here for Shavasana. But you can also come down out of your shape, especially if you've got the block under your hips. Go ahead and like lift your hips up, slide that block out. Give yourself a little back massage where the block was. And then extend your legs out into your Shavasana. So you could put a bolster underneath your legs or some pillows. You could definitely cover up with a blanket if you're a little chilly at your house. So just allowing yourself to kind of find a position that's very comfortable. And you might need like a little happy baby pose, or you might need the little stretch out, or another layer of clothes, or an eye pillow. And then when you get settled, take a really deep breath. Let go with a really deep and make that audible sighing sound. That helps trigger that parasympathetic relaxation response in the body. And then let yourself really sink in. And so what's cool about whatever pose that you choose as your final pose is you want to choose one that doesn't do a lot of tugging on you, so that you feel your bones kind of drop into the sockets and you feel the sense of the earth kind of holding you, right? Because you don't have to hold yourself up. You can really just let gravity hang on to you for now. I like to do this little scan where I start down, either start at the top of my head or down at the tips of my toes. Tonight I'm going to start at the tips of my toes. And then I just notice the kind of spacing of the toes and letting the toes kind of fall away from one another. Feeling the soles of the feet smooth out and relax. Feeling my shin bones and my thigh bones release. And I like the feeling of my femur bone kind of dropping a little deeper into the hip socket. And if it doesn't feel that way for you, maybe it feels like they're almost being kind of pulled away from the hip socket, definitely give yourself a little bit of support into your leg bones, and that will help. And then let the back of the pelvis rest on the ground comfortably. And by that I mean double check that you're not holding any tension around the hip muscles. And I like to trace the architecture of my spine, kind of feeling the tailbone gently curling inward, and then feeling the back of my sacrum curling outward toward the floor. And the sweet rise of my lower back. And then my upper back and my ribs kind of resting on the floor to catch the rest of my body weight. And that sweet rise of my neck. And then the expanse of my skull. Gently allowing my brain to fall into the back part of the skull. And the eyes to grow a little heavier. And the jaw and the lips to relax a little more. Now, you're going to take a moment and just bring into your mind a sense of gratitude to your heart, And just consider the things, or the, in general, your things that you're grateful for. Grateful for this life, for the next breath that comes along. Grateful for your home, for your family or friends or pets or all of the above. Grateful for the yoga practice that brought us together tonight. And then we're going to send out a little prayer of healing to all of the people on the earth, and also all of the beings on the earth, right? So sending out prayer for healing and for health and vitality to all the beings of the earth. And you can put a special little cap on that and say all the people that are currently struggling with the coronavirus, a little extra healing and vitality to them. And then the last part of this is to send out a prayer or a sense of vitality and healing to the earth, and to imagine the earth as an abundant garden all around us, so that all of the beings on the planet have an ecosystem within which to live, and that we are supported by the earth in an abundant way. And then holding all those prayers in your heart and coming back to them whenever you like. You're going to take a nice big breath. And a big deep sigh. And then you're going to wiggle and stretch. And give yourself a back massage. And roll to your side. And eventually, yogis, unless you're planning on napping right where you are, or sleeping the night away, eventually bringing yourself to a seated position. And we'll take one more breath together. Nice big inhale. And a big deep sigh. Namaste, yogis.